live button. All right, hello everyone, and welcome to this session of CoachX Conversations. My name is Austin Matzel. I'm here with the Institute of Coaching, and I'm here today with Hae-Sun Moon. And I'll just give you a really brief intro to Hae-Sun if you're not familiar with her work already, and then we'll be getting into the conversation today. But Hae-Sun is a communication scientist, an educator, and author of Coaching A to Z, The Extraordinary Use of Ordinary Words, and several other collaborative books, including Thriving Woman, Thriving World, and The Foundations of Brief Coaching, a shorthand book for professional coaches. And Hae-Sun is going to be one of our keynote speakers at the Institute's 16th annual Coaching in Leadership and Healthcare Conference that is accredited by Harvard Medical School in May. So just a few months out, Hae-Sun, you're going to be in Boston with us on May 1st and 2nd. So for anyone interested, you're going to be able to register for the IOC's conference by going to the Institute's website at theinstituteofcoaching.org. For anyone of you joining today, though, you're going to be able to talk with Hae-Sun. So please feel free to let us know where you're calling in from around the world and any questions you have off of Hae-Sun's work. And today we're kind of talking about Hae-Sun, your keynote, which is on this idea on the habit of better. Before we jump fully into that, I'd love to know, how did you get into the science of communication and researching the importance of using different words?
Oh, where do we begin? And nice to see all of you. And I will be watching comments. So please do comment in the section about your questions, where you're joining from, and who you are. You know what you care about in the world. And Austin, science is something that I struggle with. Even the word science, and how do we? What do we mean by it? How do we define it? Especially living in the world where science is understood as optional thing that you can trust or not. So communication science is something that I sort of stepped into um, initially as um, somebody who was learning English as an additional language. So I spoke
Mm.
French before I learned English, and for every single English word that I learned, I guess I forgot my French. But moving to Canada from Korea, I had to pick up the language. And learning this language as an adult, you had to pay attention. You don't learn the same way as children they do. So you have to look at the word. And I remember memorizing like 40 different words every day, and it was a struggle. And somebody gave me this book. And it said, instead of you memorizing all these words as individual words, if you understand how words are made up, it will be easier.
Mm.
And here's prefix, here's this, and this means this. And I'm like, what a great way to learn this language. So that was my very soft and gentle introduction to uh, what do we mean by language and communication? And is there another structured way of learning rather than just being immersed in it? And I went ahead and went to school. I have a few different degrees, but my first one was in life sciences. So studying biology and all those different things. And I remember in my second year, I had to dissect, maybe it was my third year, I had to dissect an animal that came in a little vacuum package and I passed out in class. So
Maybe
that
not for you.
so then I ended up doing like neuroscience and all those things. But then after I finished that, I was working with people with developmental disabilities. I mean, that's the label that we have for people who do not communicate in the way that we understand. It's a very, us-centered labeling, isn't it? And working with people who have different labels and communicating in a way that I don't understand, for example, I learned to truly uh, try to listen, try to watch what they are communicating because they are out of my frame. So they're doing something, banging their head. To me, it looks like, why would you do that? Because that's their expression. So how they communicate is something that I had to learn. So communication, they were communicating all the time. It was us not getting it. many times, right?
Mm,
And
mm,
I think, Austin, when you think about communication science, it wasn't until much later even when I was working as a consultant, and many of you who are joining probably can relate to this story that maybe you're doing appreciative inquiry, coaching, therapy, whatever it is that you're doing. Somehow you knew that, wow, this worked. But when somebody asks, how does it work? You're like, well, I don't know, but it worked, or it somehow works. So I got very interested in process study of communication. And there are so many outcome studies of did it work? Yes, it did. How did it work? Well, it kind of like worked. And I actually have a book here that's called a very well-known book on coaching. And there is a quote, it says, coaching works in mysterious ways. And I remember reading that line. I was very troubled. I was like, what do you mean? Like, why is this so clumsy? I mean, I wouldn't go to see a surgeon and who's operating on me and say, "Yeah, kind of like, how does it work?" I I don't know. I just hope for the best. It works in mysterious ways. I will not put my body in his care or their care. So then
mhm.
I wondered, is there a way that we can be precise with what we do in our craft? And I think we should really think about that, don't you think, Austin? So
Yeah.
I got
No,
introduced to, yeah, microanalysis, which is a precise observation of how communication works. So that's a long story into how I got into this process study of communication.
no, thank you so much for that. And especially within the space of coaching, I think for individuals wanting to work with their clients better and understand, you mentioned kind of the space where people with special needs maybe have issues with communication. That's just on a spectrum, on an end of a spectrum when it comes to communication issues. I think we'll find that absolutely every single person on the planet can engage with communication in ways and have issues with that communication. So the microanalysis I think is very important for all of us.
Mm,
To get kind of towards the topic of your keynote, the habit of better, we were talking just before this started about the notion of better, or this idea of better
mhm.
being either outside of us or inside of us. So I'd love to talk more about that with you.
So this particular talk today is a habit of better, and we're going to expand on it in the keynote. And it has a little bit of like tiny addition to it, which is interfluence, which is a term that I introduced to the world because I was introduced to this word of influence, how we influence or how we shouldn't influence, and also some people called it confluence. And then I thought, but confluence somehow it ends somewhere, but then communication doesn't end; it's continuous. It continuously flow. So then I thought, is there other words that describe it? And there wasn't. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna make something up. So then looking at how things happen interactionally, not internally, interactionally. So my lens is not I think psychological lens is very useful. That's not my lens. I don't look at individually, I look at more collectively and interactionally. So I take on more of a sociological lens and sociolinguistic lens into how I see things happening. So when we think about habit of better, this title came from my own interaction with my nephew who's 16. And he's been having some trouble at school. And we've been talking and we've been doing different things. And one of the things that we decided to do actually together 2 years ago is he wanted to do self defense. I said, "Oh,
Mm,
okay. What do you want to do?" And he said, "I don't know, judo, maybe jujitsu, maybe karate. I'm not sure." And as a overprotective aunt, I just wanted to go and try out to see what will be the safest. I mean,
mm.
I'm sure he's stronger than I am, but I just wanted to see. So I went for trials for judo, and I'm like, there's no way. And jujitsu is like, oh, okay, I'm not sure. And when I went to karate, I thought, wow, this is really safe. I like it. So I personally liked it, and I ended up signing up. So we've been doing karate together. And just the other day, I was dropping him off at his home, and he didn't want to leave my car. He just kind of, that hesitation, he didn't want to really leave. And he had something to say, and I knew that I had early morning the next day, but then you kind of sense that he had something to say. So all of you who are joining here, you know what it's like when teenagers they don't communicate verbally, but they tell you, I want to talk about something visibly. So I sensed it. So my car was running, but I turned it off. And what that communicated to him is, okay, so I can stay. Right? So there are many things that we do without using words because we communicate all the time. Sometimes we use words.
Mhm.
And he just said, I just said, buddy, you okay? And he said, do you think I'm good at anything?
Mhm.
So for those of you who are here, I see Catherine, Darlene, James, and Charlie, Cynthia, Elise, Colleen. I see your names here. So for those of you who are joining here, Emily, I see you. So when you are listening to this teenager asking you, it's your turn to speak now. They ask you, do you think I'm good at anything? What would you say? Could you please put it in the chat box and help me out here? Because I felt so stumped. It's like, do you think I'm good at anything? And first thing that a lot of parents do, adults do, is, of course you are. That inflated praise comes. There's a study about those inflated
Yeah.
praises, what it does and how it harms. Of course you are. And that's what I said, knowing that research didn't actually turn into practical thing. I was like, of course you are. You're so good at this. You're good at basketball, remember? And he said, no, I'm not. And I'm not good at it. I mean, Victor is better at that than I am. And I'm like, okay, what about? And I'm actually trying to find, you're so good at cooking. Well, not really. The last one I burnt. And then I was really stuck. It's like, how do I get out of this? How do I get out
Yeah.
of this conversation?
And
And I
also,
said, "Hmm?"
oh, and
I was-
also it's just because both you and him have this different definition of good or better.
right, right. And I see some comments here. What do you feel you do well? I'm sure you're good at some things. It can take some time. So you are enough. I love how we have these responses, right? And I said, well, you are good at karate. We're just coming back from karate. And then I was expecting him to say, yes, I am. But he said, no, I am not. I'm only at a green belt. And I thought, okay. And I asked him, but definitely you are better than before because you didn't know how to kick. Remember when you're a white belt? And he said, yeah, of course I am better than before. And I said, so how did you get better at this? Well, I didn't miss a class. I actually, even when you were traveling around, I went to karate. I went to the dojo like 3 times a week. That's how I got better. And that difference between how, when we're talking about what you're good at versus what you are better at, that difference was so big. And
Mm.
this conversation happened about 4 weeks ago. That's about the time that I sent you the title, Habit of Better. He
Yeah. Mhm.
inspired me to relook at this notion of how we construct this notion of better with our clients. Because this guy, my own family member, just kind of came out. It's like, well, yeah, I'm better at this. And then I asked him, so I mean, clearly you worked at it, so you're better than before. Yes, I am. So are there other things? Like what else do you want to be better at? And he said, badminton. Okay. So maybe we can sign you up. I actually this morning, City of Toronto, their community center, they opened their registration. So I had to get up early and wait in line and
Mhm.
online. And I logged on as soon as they opened, and I registered him to the class, badminton class. Now, this idea of better is what we're talking about here. Okay. And I called it habit of better because January 1st, sometimes Mondays. I mean, there's a research that shows gym membership surges in January for sure, on Mondays, a first of each month. And because we
Mhm.
want to do something new. And we make this psychological wall between old me and the new me, and you think it's gonna change somehow mysteriously. It doesn't happen mysteriously. So a habit of better is something that I wanted to introduce because people want to have better habits, but it usually fails. But we can have habit of better. And how do we have conversations around that? So that's where it came about, Austin.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm seeing, some of the comments here in the chat coming up. Krista says, like a question you could ask would be, well, what would be good to you? We have from Velma, what do you mean by good? From Cynthia, how do you define good? And since we're having this conversation about the habit of better in front of all these coaches here with the Institute of Coaching, I'm curious, what would be, some questions or some approaches or some micro behaviors that coaches could maybe try using if their client they're talking with is having this moment like your nephew was of just like, I'm not good at anything, I'm not getting better at anything. What would you think about that?
First of all, looking at conversations from more sociolinguistic perspective is our words do something. So one of the first things that I learned or I heard in this field of coaching, and many of you, and thank you so much for like Marsha, I see you. This is so wonderful. Stephanie, I see all these names. And hello. So maybe all of you heard this. Maybe some of you originated this. Is that clients have all the answers, right? And then that's 20 years ago when I first got into this coaching thing. That's what someone told me. Clients have all the answers. So what does that mean? That means we need to come up with really powerful question and then draw it out. So that was my very first metaphor of working relationship with my client. So client has all the answers. There is the expert of their life. I get it. So then my job becomes asking so that you draw it out. And when you look at it from sociolinguistic lens, if you look at it like that, you will say, my nephew had all the answers within him already. You would probably see it like that. This idea of better is not something that is existing inside a person. It's a cognitive view that is sitting inside a person, is just waiting for you to ask that question so that it comes out. The way that I see the notion of better is, and also when you think about it, coaching question, for example, somebody says, so how would you know things are better? And this is how you put this idea of better as external to you, somewhere sitting in the future. Now, when you do something like that, so I want to get there, so it becomes a destination. But when you look at it from sociolinguistic lens, this idea of better is not there yet, but we co-author it as we speak. Until I asked him, so, but you are better at this than before. How did you do this? Now we're constructing this idea of better. He didn't have that before. So idea of better is not cognitive behavior. It's more interactional development that you see. So what I love studying is how this idea of better or change or self-identity, when somebody says, I am good at this, how does it develop over time? And I remember studying this tape of Insu Kimberg, who's one of the founders of solution focused practice therapy in this case. And she has this tape called Working with a Mother. And I Love My Kids is the tape. And when she's working with this mother, two children in foster care and all those things. And the mother is describing herself in the beginning of a session that I'm a horrible mother. I'm a mother who's beat up and physically abused by the spouse and so on. And so that's the first part of that conversation. Within 20 minutes, when you fast forward to 20 minutes later, same person in that session, she talks about, yeah, I think I'm a good mother and I learned to be like this because my father believed in me. How did that happen in 20 minutes? And for you to know that, you need to look at the process of what got co-constructed. So that's how I look at this lens. And even the word, there are different betters. For example, I'm just blanking on this researcher's name. What's the researcher's name? There's a study that were done with children, and about five, I think researcher's name is Grell. Back in 2020, I think it was done with 580 children or something, like nearly 600 children, and they're randomly assigned to two different groups. So one is you are asked to sort of rate yourself or gauge yourself based on this idea of better. So socially, so social comparison. Group number one is social comparison. So compare to that group, compare to that person. How are you doing? And that's the first condition. Second condition, they were assigned to gauge themselves based on the temporal, the timeline. So it's not I am better than whom, but second condition is I am better than when. So when you
Mm-hmm.
put children in those two groups, they looked at this again coming from psychological studies, so it's ontological difference here. But when you look at that study, what that does is sense of pride goes up when you are socially comparing yourself. I am better than so and so. I'm better than this person. Their sense of pride actually went up,
Mm-hmm.
but their sense of belonging did not. In the other
Mm-hmm.
group where they talk about this, I'm actually better than 6 months ago, I'm better than 2 weeks ago, I am actually better than even yesterday me, I am better today. If kids are gauging themselves as better and it's a timeline, not social comparison, then their sense of pride, yes, it goes up too, but sense of belonging. And it's so much healthier for children to think about where was I 6 months ago, 4 months ago. And I
Yeah.
realized that that's exactly what happened with Nathan. When I asked Nathan, comparing to Victor, comparing to this guy, yeah, you're still at this level. I can say that, still at this level. You have yet
Mm-hmm.
this much to go
Mm-hmm.
versus, but how did you get up to a green belt already?
Yeah.
You're white not too long ago, right?
Also, something that I think is so special because you talked about sometimes people think about better as a location to go to, but your definition, looking at it as better being something that's co-authored as it's being spoken, it becomes so special. The exact moment and the exact people who are there. Because the better that you and I
Yes.
create will be better than any other combination of people could create. Like we each in conversation, we create our own unique form of better, I think, which is very special, very poignant for that exact moment and that exact pairing of people, whether it's aunt and nephew or coach and client.
Hmm. Austin, there's this term in design that it's called affordance.
Mm,
Affordance, many of you might know this, that is designing it specific ways so that it's easier to cue certain behavior. For example, you've met all these kids, they don't speak yet, but they know how to operate iPad. They're like, yep, if I go there, and then get to the game. And it's amazing because all these smart tablets are designed to be easy to use. So even children who don't speak full sentences, they know exactly what to do. I mean, when you look at there's a door in the corridor, the hallway that you're walking, and then you see a door, but then there's no handle. What does it cue you to do? There's no
push.
handle. You push it. That's affordance. It's a design principle that you design it to cue, not cause, cue certain behaviors. Now, we call what we do in coaching interactional affordance. So we do something in our speech act that cues the other person to do something. So when we hear things like in coaching, oh, we are neutral, we are never neutral. The minute that you are there breathing in the room, you just cannot be neutral. So your co-presence is already influencing. So then it's not about, oh, am I influencing or not? You are influencing. So the question is how? How do we influence? And this idea of interaction affordance is after you say something, what are they more likely to do with what you just said? So many of you might know this dialogic orientation quadrant that I have developed. Oh wow, nearly 10 years ago now, and sort of it's a listening map. As you listen to people, you can listen in a way that you can organize where they are in their narrative, because you can also influence where they can go next. So, for example, there's a very simple horizontal line or timeline past to future, and vertical line of what they say they want and what they say they don't want. And when you put it together, it becomes a quadrant. So, what they say that they want in the future becomes preferred future, which is quadrant one. Quadrant two is what they say that really worked well for them in the past, becomes resourceful past. Those are the upper quadrants. And then from the past, what they say, oh, that really didn't work for me, becomes their trouble past. And then what they say, oh my goodness, I'm so afraid that this might happen, that many of us actually live in right now. I don't know about you, but I am living in this dreaded future. Oh, what's going to happen next? Tomorrow morning when I read the news, I live in dread. Actually, humans, apparently, we live in dreaded future and trouble past 3 times more than likely, especially in our narrative. Now, then,
Mhm.
how do we activate the person's resources and hope, especially when times are tough? And I think it's very timely that we're talking about this. How do we do this when we are surrounded? The first thing that you do in the morning, for those of you who watch the news, or you pick up the phone, or you do something, first thing that you hear, which quadrant is it in? And that's what we're talking about. When we are in sitting with another person, after you say something, where is your client going? Because you made it easier for them to go there. That's the interfluence. So I'll give you a very specific example. When client says, let's say in the middle of your coaching conversation, client says, everyone else has it figured out. I just heard it from a young university student graduate, and she said, everyone else seems to have like figured it out. And here I am. Now, what would you say to that? What would you say to that to this client? Everyone else has it figured out, and here I am. And if that was your client, what would you say? Now, listen to what the client says. Is the client doing social comparison or more temporal comparison to where they were? So that's what I mean. The opportunity is right there. When I hear the client doing social comparison, if I say something like, so who has it figured out? Who do you know has figured it out who can mentor you? I mean, now I am just deepening that social comparison.
Mhm.
Is it useful? I'm not sure. But I can probably also invite them to turn into something like, so, okay, so what's something that you figured out that you actually hadn't even a year ago? Now I'm inviting that sense of better into their own timeline. Now they are doing ipsative assessment, which is another name for self as your benchmark. Myself 6 months ago is your own benchmark, and where are you now?
Mhm.
Versus Yahoo, tell me who better than who to better than when.
Yeah.
Maybe for those of you who are working with leaders, and I mean I don't hear this a lot, but let's say somebody says, "I don't think I'm a good leader." I mean, wouldn't that be nice to actually have a leader who says that? But let's say somebody says, "Ugh, we need more leaders like that in the world, actually." Somebody who can say, I don't think I'm a good leader. Yeah, let's talk about that. But anyway, when a leader says, I don't think I got this, how would you respond to that person? Think
I
about it.
mean,
Just take a few seconds. Yeah, Austin, what would you say?
for a leader kind of with that similar that model, because they're in that place of believing that they're unable to have this, whatever that
Hmm.
may be. It could be so many things. So instead of having them compare to others who they believe have it better, go back to the time base and see, well, when's the last time you had something? Because you had to
Mhm.
be ready for life and work in some way to get to where you are today. So just being in that place of remembrance and being, okay, if you can do that, then you can do this, you can do something else.
That's very interesting. This idea of when was the last time when things were better? When was the last time you were doing it better? It's a very interesting invitation. Many times we call it in solution focused coaching exceptions or instances. And what's interesting is there are some studies that indicate, although I don't subscribe to overdiagnosis, but there are patterns though that we see that there seems to be correlation where majority of people would feel, many of you on this chat, if I were to ask you, so do you think you are better? I'm keeping it very vague. You're better today than 10 years ago? Things are better for you now than 10 years ago? Many of you might be like, I think so. This is a slight bias that we carry, that we tend to not discount, but we tend to overly estimate where we are as much better than where we were. My parents, when they came to Canada, and when we talk about 30 years ago, remember? And oh, things are so much better now. So that's one pattern that we see. Another pattern that we see is people who seem to carry this, um, I guess, diagnosis of depression. They have a pattern that is reversed. They tend to think things used to be much better, and now here I am. So when we ask people, so when was, tell me about the time things were better, I wonder if we are possibly inviting them to the space of regret. So compared to great past, is today, does it look a little bit like dingy? I don't know what's the word, but does it today
Mhm.
look less than it really is? So when we think about what do we mean by better? Better than what? Better than whom? Better than when? And thing that we need to be careful, especially in our speech, is often in coaching field, we ask our clients, so what would better look like for you? So suppose it's like 2 years out. Maybe suppose this conversation turns out to be useful for you. What would be better for you? I really want all of you, by the way, to be resensitized to this word better so that you hear it in your next conversation. So when we ask that, what are we doing? What are we really doing when we pose that, when we assert this question of better, the future better? What are we doing? And many people think that, well, isn't that what we do in coaching? So that they describe their better future and create steps towards it. So that's where the evidence comes in, right? That's where the evidence-based stuff from communication science comes in. So when we do something like that, the more you talk about the better future, there is a risk of number one, you're creating the person's now to be compared to that timeline of better future. Wow, I am so not there yet. I'm so overwhelmed. Is one possibility of, now I'm so overwhelmed. Second possibility is that effect of lottery effect. That when you think about, oh, if I win that Super Bowl, and then you just sit and daydream. And thinking about that saps your energy. There is a study by Gabriela Oettingen on how positive fantasy can sap your energy to act. So you thinking and daydream about the preferred future has a risk of you not doing anything. It's almost like
Mhm.
compensating. Well, I'm gonna start my many of you do this. I just signed up for a gym, so it starts on Monday. So today I'm gonna actually eat junk food and I'm gonna just lie down and do it, not do anything.
Yeah.
We do something like that in preparation for better me. I can rest today. So there is a fine balance or how we craft talking about the better in the past and the better
Mhm.
in the future. How do we do that? Is the question here.
Mhm. And it's such a delightful question, but I do see we're actually a little bit past the half hour. The time flies with you so quickly, hey son. So I think we may leave things at that question for our audience for today.
Cliffhanger.
Yes, for what it is. But come May 1st and 2nd, Hey Sun's going to be doing a keynote at the IOC's conference in Boston. So if you all would like to be able to talk with Hey Sun, to hear her speak, you can register for this event at the IOC's website at instituteofcoaching.org. So, Hey Sun, it's been so wonderful getting to talk with you
And let's
today.
continue this conversation in our LinkedIn thing. I will be actually watching
Yes.
your comments too. So let's keep this sort of going. How do we do this?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for tuning in. We'll be back for our next session of Coach X Conversation in a couple of weeks. So see you all there. Take care.
Oh, ending at a cliffhanger. Oh.